Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Nations information session on fness programs and services. I am participating today from the beautiful Quagga territory on Vancouver Island. My name is Casey LaRochelle. I'm with Special Projects with fness and happy to be supporting another information session. And I am from the Haisla Nation. Before we go to our first topic, a few housekeeping matters. We have 3 hours allotted for this, but if we're done in an hour and a half or a bit longer, then we can reclaim part of our day. This session will be recorded and we'll put it along with the presentation material on our playlist on YouTube. And I can send that out to the participants of the First Nations Circle of Practice. And if anyone isn't on that email list, my email is in the chat. If you'd like a copy emailed to you, please put your email in the chat and I'll make sure you get a copy. And we don't have a break put in, but I'd like to suggest that perhaps after fire services or perhaps through mitigation, we'll see how it's going and we'll consider a little break at that time. So with that being said, welcome again. Thank you for making the time. And I'd like to go to agenda topic number 1, Francine Joe, for some brief opening comments.
Hello, Mike, and Quest Francine Joe. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm joining everyone from the Kamloops to Secwepemc territory here in Kamloops, BC. It's a very warm day, and we are obviously watching the fires in the surrounding areas. But we felt it was very important for us to reach out to communities, to show communities what we are currently doing, some of the programs available, and to get some feedback from communities as to some of the barriers they might be facing and the successes they might be engaging in. So I want to thank you for participating in this morning's session. And I want to thank Casey and the team for also joining and taking the time to share the work that we're doing here at First Nations Emergency Services. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or my team. I will also put my email into the chat in a few minutes. And I hope that you find this to be a very, very valuable session. So with that, Cook and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you very much. I'll pass it back to you, Casey.
Thank you. Trudy, can you share screen the presentation? And if I can call upon Bob can quickly speak to the first few slides before we join on topic number 2. Bob, are you ready to go?
Yes. Can you see me, Casey? I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay. Also, thank you, Casey, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. As you heard from our executive director, this is an information session to raise some awareness around what fness does and who we are and our programs that are available to you as a community. So we can go to the first slide, please, or I guess technically the second slide. So First Nations Emergency Services Society is a charitable nonprofit organization incorporated under the Society Act of BC. Next slide. So our vision and our mission is safe and healthy First Nations communities. We serve First Nations in developing and sustaining safer and healthier communities through emergency planning, training, response, and recovery. We also have programs that assist in fire training, education and prevention, forest, fuel, and wildfire management, leadership, and collaborative relationships. Next slide. Our mandate on November 13th, 2009, the First Nations Leadership Council and the First Nations Emergency Services Society of BC entered into a declaration and protocol agreement of recognition, support, cooperation, and coordination. In support of the First Nations Leadership Council's mandate, fness works collaboratively to improve conditions for First Nations. fness, again, is incorporated under the BC Societies Act, and we are governed by First Nations directors. Our mandate to support First Nations is in developing and sustaining safer and healthier communities through delivery of programs and services focused upon emergency management, forest fuel management, and structural fire services. So at fness, we use, in line with emergency management, we use the 4 pillars approach to help First Nations communities before, during, and after crisis. So the 4 pillars of emergency management are preparedness, and in that area, we provide emergency response plans, or rather assist in the development or the updating of your emergency response plans. We provide training, emergency management, and emergency support services. We do tabletop exercises, and we also provide sirens to communities along the coast who have tsunami warning systems. So in the area of response, our main consideration is life safety and incident stability, property preservation, evacuation and shelters, and mass care. In the recovery area of the emergency management pillar, we provide economic recovery assistance to communities, debris management, housing, health, and social services, excuse me. In the mitigation and prevention area, we provide public education on hazard and vulnerability assessments and improved infrastructure. So I had a few more things on the, that's not on the slide here, but excuse me, it's just slipped my mind at the moment, so we could go to the next slide. I believe this is off to community support services.
Yeah, and the agenda, I have preparedness division starting off this departmental presentation. Wendy, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here, Casey. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wendy Omiso, support for the community support under the preparedness division. I am the supervisor supporting with the preparedness team. We do have, right now, we have 4 full-time staff members supporting across the nation. So thank you for joining. And a lot of you, I see some familiar names that have attended our online sessions, as well as meeting you in community as well. So as we move forward, if we want to move into the next screen there, please. So as I mentioned as well, the preparedness division does support the development and the enhancement of the emergency management program. And we work alongside the community emergency program coordinator or a designated, there's multiple names out there for that particular role. We do have all our email addresses as well throughout this slide presentation today. So thank you again, and we will move on to the next slide. It just goes into a little bit more detail as mentioned before. So one thing to note when we're talking about our training, that there is a little bit of data on here that we have captured over the last 2 years. And this is just showing the amount of individuals that have taken part in the training. Well, and the relevance of that is to know that your neighbors are possibly also trained in EOC, so emergency operations centers. And all of this includes the incident command system and also emergency management. So if your community has been impacted, there's a good chance that your neighboring community also has some of that training to be able to support you with that capacity building within your own EOC, or working with another nation to support your community if you are impacted. Over the last 3 months, we've also supported more of the online learning with a whole new group of individuals, which has been great. So great to see all the individuals joining in our training sessions. Our emergency support services as well has been supported through the mentoring and training with multiple courses, including the fundamentals, reception centers, just understanding how to support evacuees within the community as well, and some of the roles and responsibilities that fall under that ESS program. With that new shift on the data, on the new digital platform as well, we're able to provide that in community support or virtual support when we are offering that training. And then also looking at community and personal preparedness. So we are able to provide that in community support. Just over 90 nations have taken part in our online training. So as I mentioned, there's a good chance that your neighbors out there are trained up and possibly able to help out, so we can help bridge those gaps and communications with your neighboring communities if that is support system that you are interested in taking part in. Just on the next slide there, Jay, I think it's Trudy. Thank you.
Good morning. It's Shane Warder calling. I'd just like to confirm my daughter's eye appointment at Chanel Wardrobe.
Shane, we can hear you online.
That's what I'm confirming. I don't know which Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Thanks, Shane. So as was mentioned earlier too, we do also support communities with tabletop exercises in a tabletop discussion scenario basis, from flooding, wildfire, and also with mock evacuation. So that process to develop those evacuation processes using your emergency management plans and identifying the support systems you may need during an evacuation. We are also available to support some just-in-time training. So if a community has been impacted and requests support from fness, we are able to come in and work alongside your community in your emergency operations center and also with ESS support. But one thing we really are there to support with is for a community to understand the roles within an EOC. So we would come in and support a community member to learn the role and work alongside them. So we're not just stepping in and taking on that role, but really building capacity within your community to understand that support that they can offer. We are also working with communities with the hazard, risk, and vulnerability analysis. Through that process, we work with the communities to identify the top 10 hazards. We go through the list that has been available. There's about 60 vulnerabilities or risks that may impact a community. So we work alongside the community, identifying what those risks may be or hazards may be, and working alongside the community to enhance their emergency management plan, and also us working with fness staff to help you move forward to mitigate some of those risks and vulnerabilities and any of those hazards that have been identified through that process. We do go into the Ops Ready. It was formerly known as Lightship, so many of you have heard of Lightship before. So the new system is called Ops Ready, and this is a data tracking as well, so that you will be able to print off a report that you can use towards grant applications. So assisting you with grant applications, and that documentation is really important, and really it shows the applications that you have done the work, and you're tracking that information moving forward to support your community. We then will work with you to support for the review and revision of those emergency plans, looking at also your evacuation plans, communication plans, and then also looking at emergency response plans. So if you've identified a hazard that will be in your community, say a wildfire, and how you provide that support, so we can work with you to identify and do a very focused emergency response plan to support you, knowing what steps you need to take if you are in an incident or an emergency that you have a one pager you look at, and it is a process of what you need to do to support your community moving forward. We can work alongside you to understand what your response plans would look like and what information you will need to have on those plans. Excuse me. We also work with community chief and council, identifying some of the leadership responsibilities, and again, working with the community to understand what EOCs are, emergency operations centers, and how the chief and council or band administrative team can support the EOC. In some cases, your team might be a part of the EOC or supporting the EOC. So we can work alongside you to identify how your community will support the emergency operations centers. And every community will look a little bit different, and we take that into consideration when we're working alongside communities, so that they really understand that what they want for their community, how they're going to be supported, and what community members or neighboring communities or agencies that you want to be a part of that plan. So we work alongside you to understand and work through that into your emergency plan as well. We are also able to support the information for a band council resolution, and also declaring a state of local emergency. So working alongside you and your emergency program coordinator, your chief and council, to understand that documentation and having preparedness on those pieces of information as well, so that you're not working on those if an incident is happening, that you have a folder, a file, some type of process in place already that you could just grab that documentation and then fill in the dates and the correct information regarding the incident. That we do have that offered in person and also online coming up in the fall. We also will support communities with individual and family preparedness workshops. We will provide that online or in person, and sharing information about grab-and-go bags, understanding of evacuation routes, what a household would need to do to prepare themselves for any type of emergencies. We also like to support this workshops through community events. So we also offer up our presentation and information that a community EPC or emergency coordinator can have access to, and then just offering this up several times throughout the year to keep their community members up to date. If you have new chief and council members on board, and then just sharing that knowledge internally, so we are able to support you with providing you with information that you can then offer to your community, and then you can adjust that PowerPoint and information really focused to your community as well. So that is an option that we do have available for your communities. And just a note on all of this that we offer, there is no charge to community members for any of these that we offer online or in person through our preparedness division. And that goes along with all of the offers with fness opportunities that we do talk about. So I just want to say thank you again for attending all the training sessions over the last several years, and in the last couple of months of just being prepared and reaching out to your neighbors for that extra support. So I'm not sure if I do have a little bit of time for any questions or comments. Casey? Perfect. Questions, comments, clarification, anybody have a great story they'd like to quickly share? That'd be awesome.
And there's plenty of time for questions that you may think of after at the end of the info session as well. If you have a question or a comment, maybe raise a hand, or if you're on the phone, just feel free to jump in.
I'm in a meeting till 12.
Health Manager Barbara,
Yes.
you have a question?
Oh, sorry. No, I don't.
Okay. I'll mute you.
Sorry, I'm late.
No worries. Thank you. I did put the preparedness email in the chat there as well. Feel free to send us a message if there's anything particular that you need support with, or if you are looking just for some clarification regarding any information that was shared today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I'd like to turn it over to the presenter on Recovery and ESS Division. I think that's you, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ford. I am the Community Recovery and Emergency Support Service Supervisor with fness. Today, I'll be talking a little bit about our department as far as recovery and ESS and what that might be and what it means to your community. So recovery in the context of emergency management refers to the phase that kicks in once the imminent threat to human life has subsided, and often alongside response. It's really important to kind of consider recovery along response. It does have impacts to the short and long-term recovery efforts in the community. But depending on the degree or severity of the event, there are a number of factors that should be considered, including critical infrastructure. So roads, bridges, utilities, community infrastructure. Has homes been affected? Band offices, health buildings, cultural losses. So significantly important items, structures, and lands. The emotional and social well-being involving restoring the sense of safety and stability within the community environment. So the impacts to natural environments, steps needed to reestablish healthy and state of the long-term, to mitigate the long-term impacts, as well as the economic recovery. Often recovery isn't an overnight department. It can often take months or years. Short-term recovery focuses on the restoring the essential services and getting community members back, while long-term recovery often focuses on if homes are lost, critical infrastructure has been affected. But it's not just about fixing the physical damage, rather than healing and honoring culture and ensuring that we're ensuring future generations thrive. Often we'll hear, I just want things to return to normal. And I think in the context of recovery, we have to acknowledge that it's the new normal, because things may not always be in a phase where they can go back to being the same. especially in some of the larger scale fires and floods. And recovery needs to be community led. It needs to be at the direction of the community. So that's a little bit about recovery, kind of in a nutshell. Emergency support services is also a provincial program which provides temporary relief to individuals and families affected by an emergency or disaster, and so they can plan their next steps. ESS often falls into 3 categories. So level 1 is a house fire. Level 2 can be 12 or more people affected, so apartment. And then level 3, which for the purpose of today's discussion, it will be in an event a community needs to receive services. So our department, as Wendy mentioned, no cost associated. So in the event that there is a large scale emergency, we can come in and work with the community to develop a recovery plan. So customize that to the community's needs and what has been affected. So if there's been homes, infrastructure, the landscape, economic losses, kind of just so developing it to be customizable. And with that, supporting the community through the provincial and federal funding sources. So sometimes those can be a little difficult to navigate. So kind of taking the time to explain what disaster financial assistance is and some of the different routes that the province may take at addressing the emergency. We also, if we can't find partners federally or provincially to fund a pillar, or not pillar, but a section of the emergency recovery plan, we'll look to NGOs to fill that need. So we do have a well-diverse network of partners that can assist. We also do provide ESS training, so we can come in and provide personalized sessions to kind of meet the team where they're at. So those will be in person or online. We can do, depending if the community is at a place where they are ready to build an ESS team, we can offer ESS plans, which kind of outlines what they would do in an emergency or how to address level 1 through 3, as well as we are in the phase of creating a recovery plan to accompany the HRVA. So what that would mean is Wendy Omiso's team would come in and do an HRVA, so hazard risk vulnerability assessment, and our team would come in and create a recovery plan that would list the top X amount of hazards. So that's kind of what we could do outside of response. In response, our team can come in and support in an EOC, in the ESS liaison position to help navigate the ESS process and provide mentoring opportunities. Liaise between the evacuating community and the reception center and or host community, mentorship for the community navigator. We are active in supporting the implementation of the cultural activity location support, so the CALS policy through the province, and supporting with re-entry. So kind of getting what that looks like, helping ensure that the essential services have been restored so it's safe for communities to re-enter. Yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I know that was kind of fast, but are there any questions?
Hi, Stephanie. There's a question in the chat from Michelle Edwards. Does fness liaise with the local restaurants or retail outlets on what to expect from people who are evacuated regarding vouchers? They should also receive some training in being compassionate.
Yes, I agree. Fness does not necessarily reach out to vendors. That's usually falls within the local ESS team regionally. So here in the city of Langford, my team would connect with the restaurants, hotels annually and kind of talk about what that process looks like. But I do agree. I think there needs to be a sense of humility and understanding that it's a stressful time for everyone, especially when ESS is activated in large scales. But always happy to, if there's an issue, to have a conversation and kind of bring it back to the grassroots and remind vendors and suppliers and help them you feel supported too with the process, because it can be hard on everyone.
Thank you for that. Are there any additional questions or comments on this part of the presentation? Feel free to raise your hand or just kind of jump in.
I
And
would
it's
just like to
okay if
mention,
not. If you have a question, we'll have it at the end as well. Another opportunity for questions about anything in the presentation.
and I'll put my email in the chat as well if any questions come up, and we can support.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Then the final presentation and community support is by the response division. Vic, I think that's you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for giving me a little bit of your time. Appreciate it. Yeah, there's a little blurb there on response there you can see on the slide, but I'll just kind of highlight a few extra notes got on the screen here that might speak to some of that. So just quickly, fness supports the communications with various acronyms and alphabet soups out there. The EMCR, the Emergency Management Climate Resiliency, the Provincial Emergency Coordination Centers, the Regional Emergency Operations Centers, the BC Wildfire Service, and partnering with First Nation health authorities or anybody else at any different level that might support the community impacted by the incident, whatever that cause might be. We do have a BC Wildfire Service and fness have a structure protection coordination office where we send an officer, and that's a rostered spot throughout the fire season that we will there collaborate with them to support. What that would include is providing structure response trailers and structure protection trailers and crews. We offer structure defense planning, training to the communities, program evaluations, equipment needs and assessments. We do have 7 Type 2 structure protection unit trailers fully equipped. We have 6 Tiger Dam trailers for flood protection and post-flood trailers. We also provide mitigation and Tiger Dam training and mitigation and response support. We have 6 fuel mitigation trailers, a heavy-duty chipper, and we are currently working on and should have at some point this season, we're developing a large volume water moving system to support structure protection and flooding. We recently have developed a drone program which supports through mapping and technology drones. A lot of fancy new attachment and toys coming out, so it's ever evolving, but that's something we've added to our Batman utility belt there. And rapid damage assessments. We also just quickly to speak on some of the training, we try to offer a bit of a mentorship through kind of like on the job training. For example, if there is a deployment of a trailer for structure protection and we provided some training, we try to keep in contact with the communities throughout the season so that if there is a community that's impacted, part of the philosophy is if, say, that community doesn't have their own crews and we are sending in contract crews to provide that assistance, if there's a neighboring nation that has some of that training or is willing to travel around, part of what we want to do is to take those students that have recently taken the course but maybe haven't had experience in the field and attach them to those crews so that they could work with getting the experience of what that actually is like in the field in a real situation to help develop the capacity and the experience and the comfort level so that they're stronger leaders within their community, and as well as sharing the resources and supporting each other throughout the province. And quickly, another thing that we are currently working on to evolve is targeting youth. We understand that emergency management in general, there's always that recruitment, that training and development of the younger generation, because eventually they are going to be in the driver's seats. They are going to be the leaders in our communities. And so we've been working throughout I guess 101, it's tailored to every request, but as requests come in from the nations to provide some kind of youth engagement or youth involvement, we've been developing scenarios and little exercises that we could try to tailor to that event to try to encourage the youth to get involved, play with the pumps and hoses and equipment, share stories about how we got involved in this, and to try to provide opportunities for employment, or at least opportunities where they can develop into leaders to protect their communities for the future.
Hey, Vic, would you
Yeah.
like any of the slides advanced?
Sorry, say again?
Would you like us to advance any of the slides?
Sure. I'm not sure if there was only one or two. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, yes. So just an example of some of the stuff we've done earlier this spring, and this at the beginning of this fire season, you'll see there's some trailers we sent the northeast province of our northeast corner of the province, Fort Nelson, Doig River. In June, we had fness sent out with the trailers to support. I'm not going to read this verbatim, it's there. I think its slideshows are pretty boring when somebody just reads it through. But quickly, some of the things that are there, we do have, like you see in Prince George, Vancouver Island, Gittanmax, that's my home community, by the way, I'm Gitsan. Those are basically the trailers. We have them strategically placed around the province so that we could try to respond faster. We do have an office in Kamloops where we keep a lot of our resources, but if you are, say, in the northwest corner of the province, it could take a day or so to transport the resources. So we try to strategically place them in places just to address that issue.
Vic, we have 2 questions in chat.
Okay.
Is there an age limit for youth to become a firefighter?
So just to be clear, we're talking wildland firefighter, because we have our fire services and they're the experts with structure, and I don't want to blur the two. It comes up, it seems to be a bit fuzzy. 19 years old is no problem. They're considered full adults. 18, there are limitations to what they can do, where they can go. They are still considered youth, and without getting into the boring dryness of it, there are certain guidelines and policies that speak to what you can do at ages 16, 17, and 18, and they're limited on exposure to high extreme hazards. So maybe if they were on a fire, there's lower risk activities that they could participate in. A lot of times these are tied to needing a driver's license, not only to get to and from work, but if you are, say, on a crew, you need to have experience to be able to drive some of the trucks and vehicles they might use are a bit larger and heavier than your regular standard, say, car or pickup. These are quite often 550 vehicles loaded with water and equipment, and quite often they're driving on FSR roads or basically unmapped roads, even deactivated forestry roads. So all of those come with added risks that will limit some of the involvement with the youth. So it's kind of a muddy answer. I think there are opportunities once you're 16 and up, but 18 is probably preferred, and once you're 19, you're a full adult. But that's not to say that, especially some of the high school kids that are planning for their, post education career, looking at what does that look like. There are folks within fness or people that we know in these other organizations that we could provide a little bit of guidance on how to navigate, what the next steps might be if you're looking to become, say, a firefighter. And was there another question there? Sorry, I'm just trying to read.
Yep. Does fness have mobile EOC offices?
Like a trailer office? Is that? I'm not sure. I think, oh yeah, like the trailers. No, I don't believe we have like trailers with the radios and the Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff, like a incident command post that you might see with, say, BC Wildfire Service. But a lot of like Wendy could speak probably a little bit better about the EOC setup, but quite often, you know, we will send people out to assist with setting that up. We also have trained personnel that could take place in some of those roles. For example, if you're dealing with an incident that's going to last over, say, 2 months or longer, then there's probably leaders in your community that are going to need a weekend off or a week off or just a rest and recuperate. And so we could either, if we have somebody that has that skill set, or perhaps we could work with other communities or other agencies to find that, to try to spell people off so that they can kind of get a bit of life balance and a bit of rest. I see Wendy's on there. Maybe you could speak to the EOC a little better than I there.
Yeah, thanks, Vic. Thanks for the question. Yeah, we can support within the EOC and community. Again, as we mentioned, and Vic has mentioned too, that we will come in and support as requested. So if you are impacted and need that assistance, we can come in and again support that just-in-time training, and then bring in others if that is a request from the community as well. We are also able to support within a provincial regional operations center. So we may have some of our staff as well during response sitting in the provincial region with the nation, as well as identifying some of your needs and supporting with documentation for resource requests and extension forms. So really important that you know, we're there to support you in that regional office as well, just to support your needs. And then we also communicate with our response staff in the field, and just to kind of determine where they are at and supporting you, and making sure that you are supported in the pre-auc as well as in your own community EOCs. I hope that answers the question, but yes, we can support in person or also virtual training as well in response.
And there's one more. Does fness offer flood assessor training?
Flood assessor training, is that there's the training courses that I'm aware of. There's like a Swift Water thing that's out there. It's usually online. As far as assessments, like I said, we do have people from fness that can come out and assist with building defense plans, identifying hazards. As far as a certified flood assessor training, I'm not familiar with that one, but we could definitely come out, walk the land, and you know, if there's somebody from the community that wants to participate with us, we could have those conversations, and kind of, I guess through that there'd be a bit of guidance and mentoring. But I'm not aware of any certified course as far as flood assessor.
Thank you, Vic. Have you, did you want to speak to any more of the slides, or have you pretty much covered it all?
No, I mean, I think with that being up there, people could read it, and it would just be boring to hear me repeat it. But you know, I spoke to the large volume water moving system. There are some numbers there for those who like to play with that. It can pump water up to 5 kilometers, used for dewatering, so removing the water from an unwanted area back into a lake or a stream. And again, there's a few bullets there that speak to the youth mentorship program starting fall 2024. Basically, this is a fluid situation where it's ongoing, and we're trying to find ways to not only get better at it, but also trying to get feedback. For example, I was speaking to a chief from a community that expressed that they had funding for youth mentorship, and it was described as this youth would participate every 2 weeks in a different area. We didn't quite work something out for that, but we're still, I don't know, it sits rattling around in my brain, and we're always looking for ways where, if the cookie cutter doesn't work, how can we improvise or pivot and just make something up to address those issues, even if it's a bit more informal into situations, if that's what's needed. And I believe that's the last slide. So unless there's any other questions.
Yeah, Michelle Edwards, I see your hand raised. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, sun's shining right in my window. Had a few questions. One would be incident command training, and not really becoming the incident commander, that either our elders, a knowledgeable person about the land, and maybe a council member or emergency coordinator actually be part of it. I'm always going to look at prevention. And from my experience, being involved in, fires and floods and just emergency management and in general, the prevention needs to happen in incident command. As a First Nations woman, having to sit back and literally watch our lands being burnt and our animals, the ashes coming down, that's the cremation of our animals. And that's how we view it, right? It's not just they're out there trying to save our lives. We're trying to prevent them from doing these really large burns. And I didn't know when we were doing the Emergency Act, having to, add input to the new legislation. I don't know if fness was offering any assistance, but it would have been nice because I feel that all of our values as Indigenous people are quite common when it comes to burning. But our knowledge really needs to be right in incident command. And everybody you talk to talks, even here it's like, the wind's going to pick up at 4, so they decide they want to burn at 4:10, right? It's just common knowledge, right? Leads to common sense and preventing all of these really large evacuations, all of this stress, all of these high insurance costs. Like the people need to do something about it. We need to actually give the feedback to government, and hopefully they hear it. But we need to make those changes when it comes to the Emergency Act. And I didn't know if fness was a place that would just sit down and even have workshops, facilitate, go through some of the definitions, explain it. Because I feel the Emergency Act, when they give out almost complete jurisdiction and authority to an incident commander or the fire center, it's no different than a social worker who gets full jurisdiction to apprehend children. They end up devastating our lives. And that's how I view it. I don't know how anybody else views it, but I certainly have been a witness to this over the years. Thank you.
Yes, so that was obviously a pretty straightforward and not so complex question. Let me take my best shot at trying to address some of the key points in there. And then if I kind of missed something that you felt I didn't address, I'll ask you to reiterate it, and then I'll try to come up with something in my little brain here. But generally speaking, like the actual, it sounds like I'm joking, but the answer is yes, you're 100% correct. All of that needs to happen. Prevention, 100%. That's why, as an emergency management sort of a philosophy from fness perspective, we are looking at the 4 pillars. With response, that's why I spoke to a bit about some of the resources we offer as far as assisting with evacuation plans, defense plans, providing the training, building the capacity. Those are all under the philosophy of preparing before the incident happens. Prevention is much more specific, and it is still a big umbrella, and there's more to go in there. 100%, like $1 spent in prevention will save you 10 times that in response. And then, just as Stephanie kind of commented earlier, recovery should actually be in there. I think of, when I think of our traditional teachings, I think of like the medicine wheel that really ties into the seasons. When you think about fire season, when you think about the 4 pillars, like it's such a useful way to organize, at least for me, my mind and how my year, my work, or my day, my week goes, because it really makes sense. And when you look at the 4 pillars, it really does line up with our values and how we use the medicine wheel. And the incident command system, there's a couple of things. One, if for those who haven't taken it, or there's 100, 200, 300, 400 levels, and obviously they gets more complicated the further through your education and understanding of that system works. The short answer is all of those, there are boxes, I guess you could say, that those people could go in there, and they should be. Do they always do that? No. And part of the problem, I think, is kind of the miscommunication of who actually is in charge, who has the responsibility when you run into jurisdictions, all of that. So an incident commander in the ICS system actually has responsibilities to manage the incident, but they are actually not the top. if let's say the incident is a wildfire and it's impacting a community, the chief and council, the leaders of the community, are the ones that are in charge of that community. If it's on crown land, then it's that part of, you know, the government is responsible. That's why the jurisdiction, it comes up a lot in these conversations very early on, because in kind of the Western world of thinking, the jurisdiction decides who actually is in charge of that land, whether it's private, crown, parks. And so for our First Nation communities, it's chief and council are responsible for it. And the incident command system has those responsibilities to work specifically to that incident. But essentially, it is the BC Wildfire Service, underlining, highlighting service. They actually work for the people. And in this case, it would be a wildfire on the First Nations land. I think sometimes the incident commander, they're used to kind of being the person in charge and making the calls. So on their end, you know, I think there's a bit of like, oops, you know, I need to recognize where I actually sit in that structure. And I think one of the big things this is really important is when it comes to evacuation orders and alerts. BC Wildfire say that incident command team and the response, all those people involved, they can recommend alerts and evacuations, but the decision sits with the community and the leaders. They are the ones that say yes or no, we're going to do this. And that philosophy applies to everything. I think one of the challenges with communicating with an IMT, an incident management team that the ICS works that's addressing that incident, is that I think historically over the last 150 years, they walked in and we're in charge and we're going to do this. And it kind of is a mentality that is helpful in an incident when you're trying to focus on like a specific task, but it causes people to lose sight of who's actually in charge and who has the knowledge. And so there's a liaison position that's within the incident command system. And when an incident is in your community, not only are you responsible, but you have a say. And you should be involved in those operational meetings and discussions. And Finesse does play a role with that, and we can help. We have people that are working in Finesse that have worked for decades in the BC Wildfire Service and understand it top to bottom, so we can provide a lot of insight. We know personal relationships that can help understand and clear up that miscommunication. I've already been talking for quite a bit. It is a complex answer. I hope that's enough, and I'd love to talk more one-on-one or with a group of people if they want to expand. I just want to be respectful of the time. Did I focus too much on one part of that answer, or was there another piece to that I missed, or you'd like just a quick statement on?
That's the alleged crown land, where they feel that they have more authority than we do. We're the ones who manage it. That's where we get our food from. So that's, you know, reserve land is different. I mean, I don't have a lot of reserve land, but I have a large traditional territory that we're responsible for. So that's what we need to change. It's like quit burning our land and quit burning our food. It's our livelihood.
Yeah, quickly, the crown land, yes, in their eyes, their jurisdiction, but as you highlighted, our territories are much larger than the little square box that they labeled our federal lands. I will say this, that with DRIPA and UNDRIP, federally, Canada signed on, and provincially, BC has signed on. So it's not the solution and it's not perfect, but what it does from a government employee perspective, it clearly states in the premier has had to create an action plan and write documents and signatures, basically highlighting that. For example, I'm not picking on BC Wildfire, but let's use them as an easy example. Is BC Wildfire, your organization's general objective is to honor these agreements and reach out to the communities and respect and take into their rights and titles, even if it is crown land in their territories. That is a shift. It's still, to be honest, with all change, there's growing and all that, but it is actually a signed off document that holds them accountable. And the reason why I say that is because if you bring that up, it does equip in their language, which is sometimes difficult. They only understand their policies and guidelines sometimes, but that is now integrated in there. and it is now their job to do that at all levels. So I'm not saying it's going to be a magic wand, but it does help. And we at Finesse, we can help navigate some of that as well if you find yourselves in those situations.
Thank you, Vic. I'm mindful of the time, so if we can keep our answers brief and our questions brief, and we'll have time for more questions at the end. Sabrina, do you have a quick question we can try to answer? I see your hand raised.
Not a quick question. Can you hear me? For the flood assessor, we've been impacted here twice in the valley for floods. And we were able to put in the request to Indigenous Services Canada to have somebody come and help us do a flood plan to determine how to protect our big houses or our band office or our homes, especially the ones that are right beside the river. So that's just a suggestion for Jillian. And for our like wildfire plans, flood plans, we're moving into drought plans. We ensure that the mapping is in there for any cultural sites that we hold, near and dear to our hearts, and also ensure that it's very clear at the top of the incident plan that we give to the chief officer or the IC and the EOC that everything has to go through chief and council in our CAO. And having those in place ensures that we know what's going on in our community and that we can communicate to our members in our language, in terms that they understand, in a face that they're familiar with. And that has sort of been Cowichan Tribe's goal since our first flood, is to have that familiar face and that language that our people understand. Because when, I appreciate all of the firefighters and all of the people who take on those roles to respond to any kind of emergency. It's a big job, with long hours, and to have that communication beforehand is really helpful. So I agree with you. The ICS communication prior to an event really helps them get a better understanding of the community that they are going into. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that on how we could create that resilience when we go into different communities. Is that communication prior? And Fness has been really helpful. The MCR has been really helpful with the language and the understanding, because I'm very new to this role. So just wanted to share a little for, sorry, is it Edward?
Thank you very much, Sabrina.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly add that, just to clarify too, you bring up an excellent point. Whether it's the EMCR, wildfire, or Fness, when we talk about structures, it's a language that we kind of used, we borrowed, but it does include critical infrastructure. It does, and that includes cultural sites. They are quite often, in a lot of cases, more important than like house, because they're hundreds of years old and they're unique. And so I just wanted to highlight that those things are recognized and should be a part of the plans and the communications with those agencies and with Fness. And I just want to make sure
we have the cultural navigator role that's available to everybody now, as long as you put in the request. And that cultural navigator role is to be side by side with the liaison, ensuring that any specific cultural awareness that needs to be present is there.
Thank you, Sabrina. That's a very key point.
Yep.
Thank you very much for the great information from community support and all the divisions. I'd like to proceed with topic number 3, fire services. And maybe after the fire department training, we'll see where we're at with time and if we're in need of a break. We'll take questions at the end, brief questions, and we'll try to make our responses brief as well, just because I'm mindful of the time. Would someone like to start us off on fire services?
Yep. Thank you, Casey. My name is Nathan Combs. I'm calling in from Gittamax Reserve, which is my hometown in northwestern BC, where I'm fortunate enough to work remotely as the fire services manager for Fness. And in fire services, we provide fire prevention and structural firefighter training that includes fire safety education, fire services training, and community support. And here are some of the pictures of us engaged with firefighters. This poster on this page is cooking safety that went out to all the fire departments, communities, and we really try to indigenize the content that we're sending out to our nations. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So we have many core programs, but they can be broken down into these four main sections, which is home and community protection, fire department training, youth mentorship programs, and fire safety assessments. And the next few slides will go through our core programs. There's a lot of them, so I'll try to be quick. Yeah, next slide, please. So one of our programs is the fire leadership and home fire life safety and community fire prevention. Program is to educate and increase capacity of the chief, the band council, and other leadership regarding community fire prevention. This is a really important program where we can come in and work with the chief and band council to let them know how best to support their fire departments. And if for example, you have a new council coming in, we can come in and do this leadership program. It gives that council a really good idea of how best they can support the fire department moving forward. We have a smoke alarm and fire extinguisher program. This program provides essential home fire safety equipment, smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms, as well as small fire extinguishers to First Nation communities at no cost. And you can find the expression of interest for this program on the fness website. And I'll put my information in the chat here when I'm done. You can get a hold of me as well if that's a program that you'd like to learn more about. Youth Engagement Initiative, Gathering Our Voices Conference. This program provides fire prevention training boot camps for elementary students, high school students, and young adults. Fness participates in the annual Gathering Our Voices of Indigenous Youth Leadership Training. So we try to do a few youth boot camps throughout the province each year in the summer times. And we work with regional fire departments, our active fire departments on First Nation communities. And it's just to show the youth that firefighting is an option. If it's something they thought about, but never really, had the opportunity, we offer that opportunity for the youth to come out, get the gear on, drag the hose, spray the water. And so I got a couple boot camps in the works for this summer throughout the province. I'll just share a really quick success story. There was a youth at a North Vancouver boot camp that was very keen, very young, nice young man. And he came up to us after the boot camp and shook all our hands and said, "Thank you very much for your time. And if there's any future opportunities with Fness, let me know." And he's now working for Fness on a casual basis, and he runs the smoke alarm and fire extinguisher program. So it's also an to get people into Fness as well that are youth that are keen. One other thing we're doing is the mentorship program, and that is the older youth, young adults. They want to be career firefighters. They work directly with a Vancouver firefighter who's an Indigenous guy, and they go through all the JIBC training, and Fness is there to support them. So it's our first year of that, and it's going really well. Next slide, please. I'll just have to stop my video because my internet is unstable here in Getamax, unfortunately. Casey, can you still hear me okay?
We can, and then I'll flag some questions in the chat once you're done your presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I'll get through all these different departments here, and then we can chat some more. And then we got the school fire prevention education, development of school fire champion and school poster contest. That's provincial. And we've gone national with some of our content, which was really exciting last year. These programs provide age-appropriate fire safety education to students, giving them the opportunity to practice fire safety skills and participate in the Fire Prevention Week poster contest. And that's the stuff that we're really working on, indigenizing the content that goes out. We hired Indigenous artists to help us with that. So that's something that's really important to fire services. And then we have fire officers safety and capacity building. The program teaches fire officers how to safely monitor subordinates while focusing on safety, covering topics such as leadership, strategies, and tactics. Really important for fire chiefs or new captains in the fire department to learn all these tactics and strategies. We do a lot of firefighting training. Fire services prides ourselves on getting out there in the community and helping fire departments with their basic training and skills. We just updated the exterior program to really cater it to our First Nations community. We've made it a shorter period of time, respecting that firefighters are volunteers, they have lives and families. So we've got it down to 8 days. We've got rid of all the content that isn't relevant to First Nation fire departments. So that's just launched recently in the last few months, and we're doing 2 pilot programs right now, and they're going really well. And then we have the fire competitions, provincial and national. Each year, fness hosts a firefighter competition where teams of 5 compete in the events to test their physical ability and firefighting skills. This year was the 39th annual, and next year will be the 40th annual. So that's going to be a big celebration. We're going to try to make it even more special next year. Next slide, please. And then we have the department networking and mentorship platform. This platform was created to support First Nation fire departments to enhance fire officers' skills with admin and operations of their department. And the annual summary report is just a report that showcases the achievements and milestones for the year and supported by the quarterly reports. Then we have fire service communications, advisory, and outreach. Communication to fire services, it has been in a monthly email with tips, skills, etc. that fire departments can work on. And then we have fire safety assessments. These assessments are conducted by fness on behalf of ISC to assess the overall level of fire safety of a community and provide options to enhance the level of fire protection. And something we've just added to the FSA is the follow-up. So we go into a community this quarter, there was 12 done, and then we make sure to follow up with those communities that have had the FSA done to make sure that they're on track and they have all the tools they need to move forward to make their community safer in terms of fire protection. We have the driver pump operator program. It's a real hands-on course where we have our casual employees go in, our full-time staff to go in and go over the engine, make sure that every firefighter can run their pump through instruction demonstrations and lots of hands-on training. And then the community firebox training. This program was designed to use community stationary and mobile fireboxes to safely protect exposures during a structure fire. Firebox, we're trying to get more fireboxes in communities that have no fire department. So this would be their first level of defense in terms of fire safety. So we're really trying to get into communities. ISC has been very a good partner with us with getting more fireboxes into communities that don't have no fire protection. And then we have the community first aid. This intent of the course is to train adult community members in basic first aid, CPR level C, and the use of AED. The course is equivalent to the WorkSafe BC Level 1 course and is good for 3 years. We also leave AED in each community that we do the first aid course in, which is a nice bonus. I think that's it.
Thank you. In the chat, there's a couple of questions. 2 of them relate to boot camps. First one, any boot camps on Vancouver Island? And the second one, any boot camps in the Caribou region? How do we request those be available in our area?
No to both of those right now, but definitely could be an option. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. If you want to see a boot camp in your region, then we should talk and see what we can do. We do need a real active fire department with a hall that is fully equipped to be able to run these boot camps. That being said, Fire Services is working on a fire trailer, which would have everything we need to deliver a boot camp and all our training. So the proposal's in right now. Hopefully it gets approved and we can start building this trailer. And then Finesse can work, in more remote rural communities by towing this trailer into the community, because those are the communities that need the boot camp the most, right? Dwindling fire departments and members. So we really need to capture those youth and get them keen, even if they just want to join their own fire department in their community. That's a great way to get started.
Thank you. Few more questions. Denise James, Penelakut Tribe. We recently had to drive around our island looking for a possible fire. Does that need to be part of report? Fortunately, there was no fire.
It doesn't need to be reported if you didn't find anything.
Thank you. There's a question about first aid training in community being absolutely necessary here in Penelakut. How can we get it there?
Send me an email and I'll send it to our instructors and put you on the queue. Real easy. And we could it might work out if they have other training in the region, then we could just fit you in. It's just a day training. But yeah, I agree. The rural remote is key to have that training.
Thank you. And I think for all the presentations, we can put our contact information at the end of each. Sabrina asked, pump operator program, are those on Vancouver Island?
Yep, you just have to make a request. So any of these programs, reach out. We're pretty good at fulfilling these requests. So we do have staff throughout the region, and if we don't, happy to send a couple of trainers over to do any training that you see fit.
Thank you. And I'd like to take the gauge of the participants. Is now a good time for a 5-minute help break, or do you want to get through another couple of divisions of the next presentation? Maybe just chime in if you'd like a quick break or if you want to move forward. I see yes to a break. So why don't we come back in 5 minutes and we'll pause recording and then we'll start on our next presentation. We'll come back at 10:15.
If we're able and we have the time, and if community requests that Finesse comes out to do these training sessions, we are more than happy to come out and join in and do the instruction. One of the goals for our program is to essentially put ourselves out of a job, I guess, and we want community to take charge of their training division. And we'd like to have one of the community members to be able to go in and be an instructor of the S100, S185. That kind of steps us towards the self-sufficiency of our nations. Right now, since we're in kind of the peak fire season, we're kind of pulling away from the full custom lineups of the fire training, just because there's not a lot of availability for the instructors at this time, because some of them have contractors that they run throughout the summer. So the availability just isn't there. And some communities have been reaching out for some training for the S100 to S185, and we're trying to keep up with those right now. So we're going to be recommending that communities just kind of hold back off of the custom lineup just for the time being, and then we're going to return back to the full lineups in the autumn, winter, and spring. There's zero cost to the community for the training. We cover all the costs for the instructor. The only thing that fness does not cover is the wage subsidy for anybody who's attending the training but is missing work. fness doesn't cover the food for lunches and etc. and the training location costs. Those are just a couple of things that should be provided for by the community. Next, I'm just going to touch on the wildfire equipment purchasing program. Just briefly, it's currently not available, but we're accepting the expression of interest, and we're planning to open it again in the fall. The reason for that is that we're just kind of still receiving back our last competition applicants, and we're just finishing up some of the paperwork on that end. The wildfire equipment purchasing program puts up the availability of up to $75,000 to purchase wildfire suppression equipment, and that does not include capital purchases, so no initial attack trucks. It just covers the cost of the suppression equipment at this time. Our application and our guideline for these programs, if anybody is wanting to see those, I can definitely send those out to you. And this equipment program was kind of built by Rob Bossy. He has a lot of experience with initial attack crews and the gear that they would need. And another goal is for us is to see the uptake of First Nations communities stepping up to provide entry-level fire crews to help with the suppression of fires with BC, in partnership with BC Wildfire Service, and move towards those communities having their own Indigenous initial response crews. And those are a couple of the opportunities that we can reach into the BC Wildfire Service, talking to your local zones, trying to make connections and trying to build that good relationship. And some of that we can start using the training that has been provided through fness and other avenues, as well as the Indigenous initial response crews, and working our way up, gaining experience until we can actually start applying for the Indigenous initial response. And I believe that's all I have for the wildfire division at this time.
Thank you very much, Terrence. If people have questions, you can either raise your hand and we'll do our best to get to you, and then also in the chat. And first in the chat, Vic has put a question. Terrence, questions I've heard from communities. Does the wildfire equipment program cover Nomex and PPE for community crews?
Yeah, so just a quick answer for that. Yes, it does cover the Nomex and PPE for community crews. But like I said, the communities do have to go through the process of the wildfire equipment purchasing program. So, but right now it's closed. But yes, it does. You can include those in the fire suppression umbrella, I guess, for outfitting the crews with the proper PPE.
Thank you for that. By a show of hands or putting in the chat, are there any questions on the divisions that have presented in this department?
I did see a brief question about Fire Smart coordinators and their positions and what they can do in their positions. These positions can also incorporate 20% emergency management duties. So this can look like an emergency program coordinator, maybe it's fire department. Anything related to emergency management, the Fire Smart coordinator can do 20% of. So if they work 5 days per week, 20%, that's that's 1 day per week that can be dedicated to something in emergency management outside of Fire Smart duties. So if you have any more questions about any of that, please send any of our divisions an email and we'll do our best to connect back with you.
Thank you, Dan. And a quick hot pursuit of that one. A community and I went over the online Fire Smart program guide from last fiscal, so I assume that guide has changed. And is there any timeline on how we can get the latest program guide?
Yeah, definitely. I haven't heard of a confirmed timeline, but it should be within the next few weeks that the 2024-2025 guide does go out.
Okay. And so our messaging we can definitely message to communities to contact Fire Smart about the 20% if they have questions. Randy Lee, I see your hand up.
Absolutely, or fuels. Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
So my name is Randy Morgan. I'm from Get One GAC. One of the EPCs that are funded through fness. It's a 1-year term. My term is actually ending September 11th of this year. And I just received the approval for the Community Resiliency Investment Fire Smart Supports Grant. So right now, I have like a month to get this up and going and to hire a Fire Smart coordinator. I did see that you guys offered Fire Smart training mentoring for this Fire Smart coordinator that we hire. My question is, there is so much to do for this Fire Smart grant. I just don't even know where to start right now. So today I'm getting the job description out, and we're hoping to hire for the beginning of August. But for me, because I know that my term is ending soon, I really want to get this person and this position and this grant fully taken care of, fully planned out, and so that things go on point if I happen to not be here in September. Is there who do I reach out to just get the ball going and to figure out where to start?
Yeah, that's a great point, Randy. And you know what? I just put an email in the chat, and if you have some time today, can you please email us and we can chat about this further? I would love to talk about your position. And yes, we do offer that mentoring. We can support you with the hiring of that person. But there's some other things that you'd mentioned there that I would love to chat about with you and potentially with our mitigation specialists as well. So if you would kindly be able to reach out to us at firesmart@fness.bc.ca, or I can get a contact for you and I'll reach out to you right away. And yeah, we can start those conversations and do our best to support you in this process.
Thank you so much. I have time this afternoon.
Awesome.
So
That works for me.
I'll send an email right away and we can get that going. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Randy.
Thank you all. And there's stuff in the comment about the 20% flexibility in other duties as a good asset for communities that are struggling with finding the funding for an emergency program coordinator, and the challenges with finding funding to get EPCs. So much work to do and not much time or funding to support. If there's no last burning question on any of these divisions, we can proceed to the next. So just putting out one last call, and it's okay if there's not. Bob Mills, would you like to start your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Casey. So good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Bob Mills. I'm the manager of special projects with Finesse. I'm originally from Haida Gwaii, and I live on the unceded and traditional territory of the Ntlaka'pamux Nation in what is now known as the City of Merritt. So just before I get started, I want to thank everybody for your comments and your questions so far, because that really helps us with our programming. We adjust our programs according to community needs. And what we do is we will help in the area of emergency management until such time as communities build the capacity to do that work for themselves. However, we'll always be here as an organization to help in whatever way you need for emergency management. As you can see, we do a lot more than just emergency management. In relation to the consultation, et cetera, I strongly encourage you to get involved with the updating of the Emergency Disaster Management Act regulations that is still in the works. So without further ado, I'll get on with my presentation. So special projects, as you can see on the screen here, we undertake specific infrastructure projects and provide communities the capacity to support and assist with emergency preparedness and mitigation. We have 5 projects currently on the go. Next slide, please. The first one that I have here is structural mitigation. So in collaboration with Indigenous Services Canada, Finesse is working with 20 First Nations communities on a variety of structural mitigation projects, mostly in relation to flood and erosion planning or protection for both riverbank and coastal waters. We're also working with First Nations on water systems automatic transfer switch project. We have numerous small water systems in the province, First Nations communities that lack these automatic transfer switches, which allow for backup power in the event that BC Hydro's connection is dropped or disconnected for whatever reason relating to an incident or a disaster. Finesse has worked with ISK to identify 61 First Nations communities that require these automatic transfer switches. And this represented 111 automatic transfer switches installations on 89 water systems. To date, installations have been completed on 83 water systems for 56 First Nations communities. Next slide. The next project that I have here that we are working on is a community building backup generator project. So this is designed to provide backup power for up to 20 community buildings and First Nations that are at high risk of either wildfire and climate change. I think personally that it's mostly in relation to climate change, because if you're at risk of a wildfire, you're not going to be sticking around your community. You're going to be evacuating. So this is more in relation to climate change. And what that does is it provides a backup a backup generator for your community building to provide a cooling center in exceptionally hot weather and or a warming center in extremely cold weather. So to date, there's been site visits to 13 communities with 7 generators ordered and an additional 5 expected this summer. Delivery of the generators is anticipated to take 40 weeks delayed, which is going to delay the project completion to the summer of 2025. So this is just unfortunately due to the time it takes. They actually have to build these generators. They don't have them on the shelf, and that's the timeline for delivery. The next project that we're working on is Collaborative Community Emergency Management Program. fness received one-time only funds from the province of BC to provide broad-based emergency management capacity building for First Nations in BC. And this funding was divided into 2 categories. Category 1 was intended to be flexible to improve capacity, emergency preparedness, response, disaster risk reduction, or recovery planning. It was also used for a variety of equipment, supplies, or training, especially for unmet needs or funding that was limited or challenging to obtain. Category 2 was intended to fund a staff position in emergency management, such as an emergency program coordinator or a community safety officer, and applicants were strongly encouraged to develop and implement an emergency program and strive to align it with other planning processes. It was recognized that some First Nations may not have had a fully funded or full-time equivalent emergency program coordinator or a community safety officer position, and this funding was to help create a full-time position. First Nations community funds began to be exhausted in March of 2024, with all funds to be expended by those communities no later than December of 2024. At present, fness is working with the First Nations Leadership Council, Emergency Management Climate Readiness BC, and Indigenous Services Canada to fund approximately 21 most at-risk community emergency program coordinators for an additional 6 months, with a small surplus from the original budget and funds from another fness program. Next slide, please. Final project we're working on is the fness Temporary Emergency Assignment Management System, or the fness Teams. This special project is heading up the Teams program as a pilot project with Indigenous Services Canada. The intention is to have First Nations people trained in emergency management and emergency support services to help other First Nations in the operation of their emergency operations centers, EOCs, or their emergency support services teams in the event of an incident requiring an evacuation. This is in line with the Disaster Risk Reduction Action Plan 2023 to 2030 by First Nations of BC. And in the first day of this program, we actually had a very good reception, or response rather, and we received 4 expressions of interest of First Nations people who are trained in emergency management and ESS who want to be part of this team. And those are the projects that Special Projects is currently working on. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone has questions, could you raise your hand, or else please feel free to put them in the chat. And in the chat, I just put a bit more information on the capacity program and how many projects we funded.
I'll also put my contact information in the chat, Casey.
And we only have one last department to present on, decision support. And how do people feel? Do we want to just press on and then try to recap, take back a little bit more of our day, or would people like another 5-minute break? I'm okay moving on if others are in agreement. And I think we can move on. Brendan, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for getting the session together, Casey. I'm Brendan Mercer, the Decision Support Manager for fness, calling in from the beautiful Shrub-Makulu territory, more specifically on the Tecumloops Reserve here this morning. As I mentioned, Decision Support Manager for fness. Pretty broad words, decision support, but basically in a nutshell, we're trying to get communities the best possible data and put it together in the most succinct, comprehensive way that it can allow communities to navigate through some of the barriers and challenges that are commonly experienced in the emergency management process. So we have teammates looking at the best preparedness information out there, pulling data from NASA, Microsoft, all these other places to put together into our decision support system. Many people might be familiar with the Ops Ready tool by now, but trying to put all that best data in one place where communities can quickly see and understand the diversity of risks across their landscape, as well as understanding how to take that risk information, put it into plans to drive funding investments, and eventually build good preparedness plans, response, and recovery type planning with some of the information that we make available through the decision support system. In this particular slide, here's a great example of some of these different data sets that we collect. You see a drone there as an example. Our drone team's actually in the field this week helping communities map out some of the fire risks and map out some of the structure defense planning projects that we've been working with communities with. But basically collecting a lot of that information through these remote sensing tools, through drones, satellite, NASA satellites, and then putting it all together, like I was saying before, so that we can create wonderful maps, these visual data summaries of what the hillsides look like, fire risk on the hillsides, all kinds of pretty exciting stuff. And then with all of that, once we're able out in the field, we're able to see some of these events in real time, add more information into these data sets, and then ultimately create a tool that continually helps us reform and revise our best practices to make better decisions and be as efficient in the 4 pillar support as we possibly can. Maybe could I hop to the next slide, please? Yeah, so on this slide, you see a bit more of a breakdown of where some of the best data sets come from. Federal, provincial, UAV, LiDAR data sets, other First Nations organization, and sort of brings it into that model there with the spider web, which just shows the resiliency of the system to be able to access so much information, put it into succinct ways that make sense to understand the 4 pillars of emergency management, and use this information basically with all that data that we gather, pull it in, chop it up into the 4 pillars, and then give it to communities through the decision support systems for use in emergency management. The reality of data is you could use it for emergency management as well as economic, governance, social, cultural needs. Data can be pretty flexible in how it's utilized at the end of the day. But we try to put all this stuff together and then make it as available and as easy to access as possible. The picture there on the bottom right side just shows a bunch of structures and fuel mitigation proposals and areas that have had completed fuel mitigations. So trying to take all this wonderful emergency data and put it in a very succinct, user-friendly way. Throughout our different tools, we have ability to help communities collect all types of forestry plot data, do structure defense planning through the tool, all types of fire smart assessments, fire safety assessments. There's really a lot of flexibility in the ways to collect data, integrate it, and then streamline it so that communities and folks that aren't familiar with, say, like ArcGIS tools can have a really robust real-time mapping platform. Some of the feedback that we've received in the past is just where communities have all this information available, actually get to take like leadership roles in some of these emergency management scenarios and tell other agencies what to do, where to station resources, because they have the best information being streamlined into their phones, tablets, laptops, and any other device that you can pull up the Ops Ready tool on. With some of the funding that we've received at fness, we have some trainers that are available and are able to travel out to communities as well as do online workshops to get people more familiar with accessing some of this information. So the decision support system, and again, most people are probably familiar or maybe familiar with the Ops Ready tool specifically, Under the fness license agreement, all First Nations in BC have access to the tool for free. And so if your community wants 4 people trained, great, we're happy to come out, train 4 people. If you want 10, 15 people trained, that's great too. Happy to get as many people engaging with using data and information effectively to leverage more funding and improved community safety over the long term. We've really, in my opinion, and obviously I'm the decision support manager, but we've done a fantastic job at creating innovative opportunities, especially for some of the youth that work for fness, as well as youth more broadly. With all the information, we've been able to put together things like emergency management video games and gamings that focus on disaster risk and climate resiliency. And so trying to use data as effectively as possible to give back opportunities to youth that might not otherwise get to play around with mapping software and information management systems. Every summer we do youth internship camps where we get between 20 and 40 youth, teach them how to access all this information, build up risk maps for their communities, add different data sets that they think are relevant or that they want to produce. And then, like I say, get those skills into the hands of youth at a really early age so that our future leaders of tomorrow will understand how to use all this mapping, collect, leverage data and information in a very effective way to, again, keep helping your communities now and over the long term down the road. One of the key things with decision support is we've built a ownership, control, access, and possession data strategy based off the principles of First Nations data sovereignty through First Nations Information Governance Center, who put out all the research and literature around how to apply OCAP. But we basically, with the information, make sure that it's always available to your communities through the platform. So if we're out supporting your community with something, collecting information, it's going to be available to you in the platform. If we're supporting you in response or recovery, again, that information gets collected, put back in the platform. So, even 2-3 years from now, you can look back at a wildfire that happened 3 years ago and know exactly what fness was doing to support your community during that wildfire. You can see any of the assessments that we've done or any of the relevant data layers that we've put together to kind of put all the pieces in one place to make it easier. Like we help out in a lot of different ways, but again, it all comes back to getting that best data and information, building tools, or sorry, I should say co-creating tools and processes with communities that effectively get them the data they need in a way they need it to drive more investment for disaster risk reduction and resiliency building over the long term. Maybe switch my slide, please. Oh, perfect. Last slide for decision support. But yeah, in summary, just trying to get the best information possible, training communities on how to use this information, and then making sure that we can create multi-generational opportunities for youth to get involved in emergency management as young as 14, 15 years old. Start picking up the skills now so that they can be our future leaders tomorrow and really take this stuff to a whole nother level. That we didn't even dream of at this point in time. But yeah, that's all for decision support. Again, thanks, Casey, for putting all of it together.
Thank you. Are there any questions for decision support? And this takes us to the final topic, is just any question or comment people have overall on anything you've heard here today. Maybe just opening it up to people. I see a question. Who administered the EPC funds for EMCR? We should provide that contact info along with Laura Acoin with ISK. The Special Projects administers the Community Capacity Emergency Management Program, which is those EMCR funds for both the Category 1 projects, which were about 18 for unmet needs, as well as 56 EPC ones. There's active discussions taking place involving the leadership, ISC, EMCR with fness there. And we do apprise them of the status of the EPC fundings through this program. And we also advise them on First Nations that might be at the highest risk for wildfire and drought. So there's very active discussions going on the status of EPC funding. Any other final questions? And if not, we can take back an hour of our day. And I don't see any hands raised. So I would like to thank everyone taking the time today to attend the presentation and for all the work that you do in community. And I'd like to thank all the presenters for presenting on a lot of information. We'll put this recording up in the PowerPoint for people to access after. And thank you. And I hope everyone has a great day and that you're doing well in community.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.